I've always thought of myself as a good husband. Steady, reliable, maybe not the most exciting guy in the world, but I loved Emma with everything I had. Sure, we didn't have kids yet. Something we talked about but always pushed down the road, but I thought we were happy. Or at least I thought she was. It started about 6 months ago, when Emma decided she didn't want to drive anymore. She said the stress of traffic was too much, and she liked the idea of sitting back and letting someone else deal with it. I didn't question it, it seemed harmless enough. At first, she cycled through different rideshare drivers. But then she started mentioning one name more and more. Ben. Ben's the best, she'd said one night, slipping off her heels by the door. He's so reliable. It's like he knows exactly when I need him. I remember nodding, half listening while scrolling through emails on my phone. That's good. Consistency's important. I didn't think much of it then. Why would I? Emma's outgoing, always chatting with people. Her friendliness was one of the things I loved about her, even if sometimes it seemed a bit over the top. But then her stories about Ben grew more frequent. Ben recommended this new Italian place downtown. Maybe we should try it sometime. Ben said his girlfriend used to work in finance too. Small world. Ben's got this hilarious story about the time a drunk guy mistook his car for a police cruiser. It was subtle at first, just bits and pieces slipping into conversations. But after a while, I started noticing that she was using him for every ride, no matter how short. Even when I offered to drop her off or pick her up from the office, she'd wave me off. No need, babe. Ben's always nearby. Besides, I wouldn't want to drag you out of bed early. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? But looking back, there was something in her tone, a lightness when she said his name, that I ignored. A few weeks later, she started dressing differently. Nothing drastic, just a little more effort. A tighter blouse here, a shorter skirt there. I teased her about it, asking if there was someone at work she was trying to impress. She laughed it off, rolling her eyes and calling me ridiculous. It's called self-care, honey, she said, smirking as she adjusted her lipstick in the hallway mirror. You should try it sometime. I brushed it off, convincing myself that she was just trying to shake things up, maybe feel younger. But then there were the late nights. At first, they were sporadic, a drinks night with the girls, a networking event, a late meeting. All reasonable, all innocent. But soon they became a routine. You don't mind, do you? It's just easier to get a ride with Ben afterward, she'd say, already halfway out the door. And every time, I'd smile and tell her it was fine, even when something about it gnawed at me. I started noticing her phone, always turned face down. Her texts, quick and secretive. Her smiles, a little too bright when she'd check her notifications. One night, as she got ready to leave again, I tried to bring it up. Emma, don't you think it's strange how much time you spend with this guy? I mean, he's your driver, not your best friend. She spun around, her face twisting into something sharp. What is that supposed to mean, Michael? Are you jealous of a taxi driver? God, you're so insecure sometimes. Her reaction threw me off. I stammered, trying to backtrack, but she'd already grabbed her purse and slammed the door behind her. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, wondering if I'd overreacted, or if she had. That night, when I heard her slip into bed well past midnight, I pretended to be asleep. And for the first time in our marriage, a knot of doubt took root in my chest. I had no idea how much worse things would get. Over the next few weeks, the nagging feeling in my gut only grew stronger. Emma became more elusive. Her excuses got thinner, her nights out more frequent. Work's been insane, she'd say, flopping onto the couch with feigned exhaustion. But she didn't look tired. If anything, she seemed more energized, more alive. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was imagining things. But then the small cracks started appearing. Details that didn't add up. Like the time she came home smelling like a mix of cheap cologne and leather. You switch perfumes? I asked casually, pouring myself a glass of wine. She froze for a split second before laughing. Oh, that's just from the cab. Ben uses some air freshener that could knock out an elephant. Or the time her phone buzzed late at night, and when I glanced at the screen, I caught the name Ben, flashing before she snatched it away. "Work stuff," she said, a little too quickly. God, they never leave me alone, do they? I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she clutched that phone, holding it like a lifeline, made my skin crawl. One night, while she was in the shower, I gave in to temptation. Her phone was on the counter, locked but still displaying a notification. "Ben, can't wait to see you again. Tonight was incredible." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. I wanted to open it to see everything, but I couldn't. The fear of what I might find paralyzed me. When Emma came out of the bathroom, I was already sitting on the bed, pretending to scroll through my own phone. She didn't seem to notice anything was off, humming to herself as she dried her hair. I told myself it could be nothing, a misunderstanding, an inside joke. But deep down, I knew better. The next morning, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do: follow her. She'd mentioned a client dinner downtown and left the house dressed to kill. Black dress, high heels, the works. She even twirled in front of the mirror, flashing me a grin. "Don't wait up, okay? It's going to be a late one." I nodded, forcing a smile. But as soon as the door clicked shut, I grabbed my keys and slipped out behind her. Her ride pulled up just as I reached the corner, Ben's car. It was a sleek black sedan, cleaner and more polished than any rideshare car I'd ever seen. She slid into the passenger seat, laughing at something he said, and they drove off. I followed at a distance, keeping my headlights low. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing with dread. They didn't go downtown. They didn't even head toward any restaurants. Instead, they stopped at a dimly lit park on the edge of the city. I parked a block away and watched as they got out of the car. Ben opened the trunk and pulled out a picnic basket. Emma clapped her hands like a giddy teenager. I felt sick. They sat on a bench, close but not touching, at least not yet. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language spoke volumes. She leaned in, laughing at his jokes, her hand brushing his arm. He looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. I sat there for hours, watching as they drank wine from plastic cups and talked like they didn't have a care in the world. When they finally got back in the car, I followed them again. This time, they didn't head to another park or restaurant. They headed back to his apartment. I didn't know what to do. Confront her now? Wait for her at home? Or just let it fester until I exploded? As I drove home alone that night, my mind raced with questions, each one more painful than the last. How long had this been going on? How could I have missed the signs? And most importantly, why? But I knew one thing for sure: whatever this was, it wasn't just a phase. Emma wasn't just riding in Ben's car anymore. She was riding right out of our marriage. The next day, I woke up with a hollow feeling in my chest. Emma was already gone, leaving a hastily scrawled note on the counter. Went to yoga, then errands. Love you. Felt like a slap in the face. Love me? Was that what last night was? Love? I tried to go about my day like nothing had changed, but every mundane task felt like a mountain to climb. I couldn't focus at work. My mind kept replaying the sight of her and Ben laughing, the way she leaned into him, her whole body language screaming a connection she hadn't shared with me in months. That evening, when Emma came home, she was in an unusually chipper mood. "Hey, babe, how was your day?" she chirped, setting down her shopping bags. I forced a smile. "Same old. Yours?" "Busy," she replied, slipping off her sandals. Yoga was intense. Then I ran into Sarah at the mall. We had coffee and caught up. "You should have seen the deals I found." She pulled out a blouse and held it up. "What do you think?" "It's nice," I said flatly, struggling to keep the bitterness out of my voice. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she just didn't care. That night, as we sat on the couch watching some mindless show, I caught her checking her phone out of the corner of my eye. The corners of her mouth twitched into a small, private smile before she quickly put it down, screen facing the cushion. I couldn't take it anymore. "Who's texting you?" I asked, keeping my tone as casual as I could. She flinched, her smile vanishing. "What? No one. Really? Looked like someone just made you laugh." "Oh, Michael, don't start." she snapped, crossing her arms. It was Sarah. She sent me a meme. Do I need to clear every text with you now? Her defensiveness only made the knot in my stomach tighten. But I dropped it for now. The next few days were a blur of tension. Emma was either out or glued to her phone. Every time I tried to talk to her, she brushed me off with excuses. Sorry, babe. I'm swamped with work stuff. Can we not do this right now?
I'm exhausted.
You're being paranoid. Relax. By the weekend, I was done sitting in silence. If she wasn't going to come clean, I'd have to catch her in the act. That Saturday, she said she was meeting a friend for drinks. Don't wait up, she said with a wink as she grabbed her purse. I watched her walk out the door. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. Minutes later, I was in my car, tailing her again. Sure enough, Ben's car pulled up. She hopped in and they sped off. This time, they didn't bother with pretense. No parks or fake errands. They went straight to an empty lot behind a shuttered diner. I parked far enough away to remain unseen but close enough to catch every detail. My worst fears played out in front of me. She leaned across the console, pulling him into a deep kiss. It wasn't the kiss of someone making a mistake. It was passionate, deliberate. Ben reclined his seat, and Emma climbed on top of him. The windows fogged up, but there was no mistaking the rhythm of their movements. My stomach churned as I watched the woman I'd vowed to love and cherish betray me in the most intimate way possible. I wanted to storm over there, rip the door open, and drag her out. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe, or the realization that no matter how loud I screamed, the damage was already done. Instead, I sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My mind a storm of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. When it was over, they drove off, laughing like nothing had happened. I followed them from a distance, feeling like a ghost. They returned to his apartment, and she disappeared inside without a second thought. I didn't go home that night, couldn't. Instead, I drove aimlessly, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me like a lead blanket. By the time I finally parked at a motel, the sun was rising. I stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about every moment, every lie, every time I'd ignored the signs. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a choice. 1,000 choices she'd made to put him above me. And it wasn't something I could forgive. By the time I got home the next morning, I was running on fumes. Exhaustion, anger, and heartbreak swirling into a toxic cocktail that left me barely functional. Emma's car was already in the driveway, and I knew she'd be inside, probably nursing a cup of coffee and scrolling through her phone, pretending like nothing had happened. When I walked through the door, there she was, just as I'd imagined. She looked up and gave me a breezy smile. "Morning, babe. Where were you? You didn't come to bed." I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. "Where was I?" I echoed, my voice ice cold. "Where the hell do you think I was, Emma?" Her smile faltered, just for a second before she recovered. "I don't know, Michael. You tell me. Did you have a guy's night or something?" The nonchalance in her voice made my blood boil. "You really don't think I know, do you?" Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms defensively. "What are you talking about?" I dropped my keys onto the counter with a loud clatter and took a step closer to her. "I followed you last night." The color drained from her face, and her lips parted in surprise. For a split second, she looked guilty, panicked even. But then, just as quickly, her expression hardened. "You followed me? Are you serious?" "Michael, that's psychotic," she spat, rising from her chair. "Don't even try to flip this on me, Emma," I said, my voice shaking. "I saw everything. You and Ben. In his car. In his bed. How long has this been going on?" She rolled her eyes, an infuriating smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Oh, grow up, Michael. What did you think was going to happen? You're so boring. All you do is work, come home, and sit on the couch." I needed excitement. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Excitement," I said, incredulous. "So, screwing some random taxi driver in the back of his car is your idea of excitement?" "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped, brushing past me toward the sink. It's not like I married him. God, you're so uptight. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd built a life with, was standing here, treating her infidelity like it was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. So what? I said, my voice rising. You don't even feel bad about this?
No guilt. No shame?
Nothing. She whirled around, her eyes blazing with anger. Why should I feel bad? You're the one who pushed me to this. Do you know how lonely I've been, Michael? How neglected I've felt. Neglected, I said, incredulous. Are you kidding me? I've done nothing but support you, love you, give you everything you've ever asked for. And this is how you repay me. She shrugged, her expression cold. Maybe you should have tried harder. I stared at her, my chest heaving, my fists clenched at my sides. There was no remorse in her eyes, no hint of the woman I thought I'd married. Do you even hear yourself right now? I said, my voice breaking. You've destroyed everything we had. For what? For him. Emma laughed bitterly, shaking her head. Oh, stop being so dramatic. You act like our marriage was some fairy tale. Newsflash, Michael, it wasn't. And maybe if you weren't so busy being a glorified doormat, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. Her words felt like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. I took a step back, my mind racing. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, her tone mocking. You're going to leave? Please, you don't have the balls. I met her gaze, my jaw set. Watch me. And with that, I turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind me. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do, but one thing was clear. Our marriage was over. I didn't go far that day. I drove aimlessly through town, trying to process what had just happened. Emma's words echoed in my head, each one more venomous than the last. Her complete lack of remorse, the way she dismissed me so casually, like I was the problem. It was infuriating. Eventually, I parked at a small diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where no one would ask questions. I nursed a cup of black coffee, staring blankly at the chipped linoleum table. My mind was racing, not with sadness, but with a simmering rage I couldn't contain. When I finally returned home that evening, the house was quiet. Emma was nowhere in sight, though her purse and shoes by the door told me she hadn't gone far. I climbed the stairs, bracing myself for another confrontation. I found her in the bedroom, lying on the bed with her phone in hand. She didn't even look up when I walked in. You're back, she said flatly, her tone devoid of any emotion. For now, I replied, crossing my arms. She sighed, finally glancing up at me. Oh God, are we really doing this again? I thought you needed some time to cool off. Cool off, I said, my voice rising. You think this is something I can just cool off from? You cheated on me, Emma, repeatedly. You broke our marriage, and you're acting like it's no big deal. She rolled her eyes, setting her phone down. Michael, you're so dramatic. People cheat all the time. It's not like I killed someone. Her nonchalance sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. Do you even hear yourself? You don't care about what you've done, do you? About how you've destroyed everything we built together. Oh, please, she scoffed, sitting up. Stop acting like I'm the only one to blame here. You're not exactly a saint, Michael. You've been checked out for months. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my temper in check. You don't get to rewrite history, Emma. This isn't about me. This is about you, your choices, your lies, and Ben. She cut me off with a bitter laugh. You're obsessed with Ben. He's a nice guy, and you know what? At least he listens to me. At least he makes me feel wanted. Her words hit like a slap, but I refused to let her see the pain they caused. Well, I hope he was worth it, I said coldly. Because you've made your choice, Emma. And I'm done. Her eyes narrowed, a sneer forming on her lips. Oh, don't be so dramatic. What are you going to do, Michael? Leave? Go ahead. See how far you get without me. Her arrogance was staggering. Did she really think I'd just roll over and take this? I'm filing for divorce, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. For the first time, her smug expression faltered. What? You heard me. I'm done, Emma. You can keep your precious Ben, your fake yoga classes, your lies. I'm not going to let you drag me down any further. Her face twisted in anger. You're not serious. Dead serious, I replied. She sprang to her feet, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. You can't do this, Michael. You think you're the victim here? You're pathetic. You wouldn't last a day without me. Funny? I said, grabbing my jacket from the closet. That's exactly what I've been thinking about you. As I headed for the door, her voice followed me down the hallway, a mix of shrieking insults and desperate pleas. But I didn't stop. Couldn't. This wasn't just the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of something I should have done a long time ago. Reclaiming my life. The morning after I walked out of the house, I made my way to the office of the divorce attorney I'd called the day before. Her name was Jennifer Kane, and she came highly recommended by a friend who had gone through a messy breakup of his own. Jennifer's office was sleek and professional, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside my head. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a reassuring smile, motioning for me to sit. So, Michael, she began, flipping open a leather-bound notebook. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to put the nightmare of the past few weeks into words. But once I started, the story spilled out like a broken dam. Emma's frequent rides with Ben, her lies, the night I followed them, and the confrontation that had shattered any remaining hope I had for our marriage. Jennifer listened intently, her pen scratching across the page as she took notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her expression a mix of sympathy and determination. Well, she said, setting down her pen, I've seen my fair share of messy cases, but this one has all the hallmarks of a clean break. No kids, no significant shared assets. That makes things simpler, but not necessarily easier. What do you mean? I asked, leaning forward. Emma sounds volatile, Jennifer said bluntly. Divorces like this can get ugly, especially when one party refuses to take responsibility. But if we handle this right, you'll come out of it with a fresh start. Her confidence was reassuring, but the pit in my stomach remained. What's the first step? We'll file immediately, she said, flipping to a new page. Adultery is grounds for divorce in this state, and from what you've told me, you have plenty of evidence to support that claim. She looked up, her eyes sharp. You mentioned you followed her and Ben, correct? Do you have any documentation? Photos? Messages? Anything concrete? I nodded slowly, the memory of that night still fresh. I don't have pictures, but I saw everything with my own eyes. Jennifer tapped her pen against the desk. Eyewitness accounts can be powerful, but having tangible proof strengthens your case. If you're comfortable with it, we can hire a private investigator to gather more evidence. The idea made my skin crawl, but I knew she was right. Do it? I said, my voice firm. Whatever it takes to end this. Jennifer nodded. Good. In the meantime, we'll draft the paperwork and have her served as soon as possible. Once she knows you're serious, it'll force her hand. A grim smile tugged at my lips. I don't think Emma's ever taken anything seriously in her life. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. She will now. As I left her office, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, relief, and an undercurrent of fear for what lay ahead. This wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. Emma wanted to play games, but this was no longer her game to control. The next few days passed in a haze. I avoided Emma as much as possible, crashing on the futon at a friend's place while the wheels were set in motion. Jennifer worked quickly, drafting the divorce papers and hiring a private investigator to dig deeper into Emma's affair. I didn't tell her I'd left the house for good. Part of me wanted to see how long it would take her to notice or if she even cared. On Friday morning, as I sipped stale coffee at a diner near my friend's apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. The papers have been served. Expect fallout. I stared at the message for a moment, my stomach twisting in knots. It was real now. There was no turning back. An hour later, my phone lit up again, this time with Emma's name. I ignored it. She called again and again. By the fifth call, my curiosity got the better of me and I finally picked up. "Michael," she hissed, her voice shaking with fury. "What the hell is this? Divorce? Are you serious?" "I'm dead serious," I said, my tone calm but firm. "I told you, Emma. I'm done." "You're done?" she shrieked. "You think you can just walk away? You think you can humiliate me like this?" "Humiliate you?" I shot back, my anger flaring. "You cheated on me, Emma. You lied to me over and over again. You don't get to play the victim here." She laughed bitterly. "Oh, please. You're such a martyr, Michael. Like you've never made mistakes. Like you're some perfect husband." "I'm not perfect," I said, my voice rising. "But I didn't betray you. I didn't destroy our marriage." "Destroy our marriage?" she repeated, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, grow up, Michael. You're overreacting. People cheat all the time. It doesn't mean anything." I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my composure. "It meant enough for you to throw away everything we had. And now it's over. Accept it." "You're pathetic," she spat. "You think you're going to find someone better than me? Good luck with that." "I'll take my chances," I said coldly. The line went silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was low and venomous. "You're going to regret this, Michael. You're going to regret crossing me." She hung up before I could respond, leaving me sitting there with the phone pressed to my ear, her words echoing in my mind. I took a deep breath, setting the phone down. This was the Emma I'd been dealing with for months now. Bitter, spiteful, and unwilling to take responsibility for anything. But her threats didn't scare me. If anything, they steeled my resolve. Let her throw her tantrums. Let her scream and lash out. It wouldn't change the fact that I was done being her doormat. As I walked out of the diner and into the crisp morning air, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. It didn't take long for Emma to escalate. Within hours of being served, she had turned the entire situation into a spectacle. I started receiving texts from mutual friends, some cautiously supportive, others dripping with thinly veiled judgment. "Hey man, is everything okay? Emma's saying you blindsided her with divorce papers." "Michael, what's going on?" "Emma says you've been distant for months. She's really upset." "Michael, is it true you're leaving Emma because of some midlife crisis?" I wanted to scream. Emma wasn't just playing the victim. She was rewriting the entire narrative, painting herself as the wronged party, while I was cast as the cold, selfish husband who'd abandoned her. I ignored most of the messages, but one from my friend David pushed me over the edge. "Michael, Emma said you've been sneaking around with someone else." "Man, I hope that's not true." "Sneaking around?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. The audacity of her to accuse me of infidelity after everything she'd done was infuriating. I dialed David's number, my hands trembling with anger. "Hey, Mike," he answered, his tone cautious. "David," I said sharply, "you've known me for years. Do you really believe I would cheat on my wife?" There was a pause. "I mean, no, but Emma." "Stop," I interrupted. "Emma's lying. She's the one who cheated. She's been screwing her rideshare driver, Ben, for months. I caught them in the act." David was silent for a moment. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "And now she's trying to spin this around, making me out to be the bad guy. Don't buy into her bullshit." "Wow," David said softly. I had no idea. She didn't say anything about that." "Of course she didn't," I snapped. "She's too busy playing the victim." "I'm sorry, man," he said. "I didn't mean to accuse you. I just didn't know what to believe." "Now you do," I said firmly. "And if anyone else asks, you tell them the truth." After hanging up, I realized that Emma wasn't just trying to smear me. She was rallying people to her side. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was war. That night, I received a call from Jennifer. "Michael, we need to talk," she said, her tone serious. "Emma's lawyer just sent over a counterclaim." "Counterclaim?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "She's alleging emotional abuse," Jennifer said bluntly. What? I exploded. That's insane. I've never laid a hand on her. Never raised my voice. I know, Jennifer interrupted. But allegations like this are common in contentious divorces. She's trying to gain leverage, paint herself as the victim. What do we do? I asked, my mind racing. We fight back, Jennifer said. The investigator's findings will help. If we can prove her infidelity and disprove her claims of abuse, we'll have the upper hand. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Do whatever it takes. Over the next few days, the investigator worked tirelessly, gathering evidence. Photos, timestamps, text records. It all painted a clear picture of Emma's betrayal. But Emma wasn't done playing dirty. On Wednesday, I came home to find the locks on the house had been changed. A note taped to the door read, "Don't come back until you're ready to apologize." I laughed bitterly, tearing the note down. She thought she could bully me into submission, but she underestimated just how far I was willing to go. I called a locksmith, had the locks replaced again, and left her belongings in a pile on the front lawn. When Emma returned that evening, her screeching voice echoed down the street as she saw the mess I'd made of her things. "You're insane, Michael!" she shouted, throwing a pair of shoes at the door. I watched from the window, shaking my head. This was who she really was. A hysterical, selfish, manipulative woman who thought she could control everything. But she couldn't control me anymore. As I turned away, her shrieks fading into the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Power. This wasn't just about ending our marriage. It was about taking my life back one step at a time. By the next morning, Emma's tantrum had evolved into a full-scale assault on my sanity. My phone buzzed with messages from her every few minutes, ranging from tearful pleas to unhinged accusations. "Michael, please let me in the house. This is ridiculous. You're being cruel. You've always been controlling, but this is too far. If you think you can do this to me, you've got another thing coming." It was exhausting. I blocked her number and forwarded all communication to Jennifer, who assured me we were still firmly in the driver's seat. "She's grasping at straws," Jennifer said over the phone. "Her allegations won't hold up. We just need to stay focused." Despite her reassurance, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emma wasn't done making my life hell. That suspicion was confirmed later that afternoon when I got a call from the private investigator. "Michael," he said, his voice laced with urgency. "We've got something." "What is it?" I asked, gripping the phone tightly. "I've been following Emma since yesterday," he began. "She's not just playing the victim. She's actively trying to sabotage you." "Sabotage how?" "She met with Ben earlier today," the investigator continued. "They had a heated conversation outside a coffee shop. From what I overheard, she's trying to convince him to make false statements against you. Claims that you've been abusive or controlling." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're kidding me." "I wish I were," he said. "But don't worry. I've got it all on tape." She even hinted that she'd pay him to lie for her. My jaw clenched as the reality of her desperation sank in. Emma wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to destroy me. "Keep tracking her," I said through gritted teeth. "I want everything she's doing documented." "You got it," the investigator replied. That evening, I returned home to find another spectacle waiting for me. Emma had stationed herself on the front lawn, sitting cross-legged on the grass with a cardboard sign that read, "My husband is a liar and an abuser. Don't let him fool you." I froze, staring at her in disbelief. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, some stepping onto their porches to gawk at the scene. "What the hell are you doing, Emma?" I barked, storming toward her. She looked up, her face a mask of mock sorrow. "Oh, look who finally decided to show up. Tell them, Michael. Tell them how you've treated me all these years. You've lost your damn mind," I said, my voice low but seething. "Go home, Emma. This is my home," she hissed, standing up. "You think you can just kick me out like I'm trash? I built this life with you." "You built nothing," I shot back. "You tore it all down the moment you decided to screw your driver in the back of his car." Her face twisted in rage, and she lunged at me, shoving me hard in the chest. "You're pathetic, Michael. A pathetic little man who can't handle a real woman." I caught her wrists before she could strike again, holding her at arm's length. "Get off my property, Emma, now, or I'll call the police." She laughed bitterly, yanking her hands free. "Call them. I don't care. Everyone will know the truth eventually. You'll see." I didn't respond. I turned and walked inside, slamming the door behind me. My hands were trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. From the living room window, I watched as she stood there for a few more minutes, muttering to herself before finally storming off. Jennifer was right. Emma was unraveling. But I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her. That night, as I sat in the quiet of the house, I felt a strange sense of calm. I'd survived another one of her outbursts, and with each one, I felt stronger, more resolute. She could lie, manipulate, and scream all she wanted. But this was a fight she wasn't going to win. The days after Emma's public meltdown passed with an eerie quiet. It was almost unsettling, the way she seemed to vanish into the shadows. No texts, no dramatic confrontations on the lawn, just silence. It didn't take a genius to figure out she was planning something. Emma wasn't the type to retreat unless she was gearing up for a counterattack. On Friday, my suspicion was confirmed. I was at Jennifer's office, going over some final documents, when my phone buzzed. Jennifer raised an eyebrow as I checked the screen. It was a notification from a social media app one hadn't used in months. Curious, I opened it. My stomach dropped. Emma had posted a long, rambling diatribe, complete with photos. "To all my friends and family, I've been living a nightmare. My husband, Michael, has been emotionally abusive for years. He blindsided me with divorce papers, kicked me out of our home, and now he's trying to ruin my life. I stayed silent for too long, but I can't anymore. Please stand with me as I fight for justice." The post was accompanied by a picture of her looking tearful and frail. Completely staged, of course. But the kicker was the second image. A poorly cropped photo of what looked like a text conversation between me and someone named Samantha. The fake messages painted me as the cheater. My hands tightened around my phone as I read the flood of supportive comments from her friends. "Stay strong, Emma. You deserve better. What a pig. You're better off without him. How can we help?" I looked up at Jennifer, my face burning with rage. "She's posting lies about me online. She's making me out to be the cheater now." Jennifer frowned, reaching for my phone. "Let me see." She scrolled through the post, her expression darkening. "This is defamation, plain and simple. But don't worry, we can handle this." "She's painting herself as a victim," I said, pacing the room. "And people are eating it up. How do we fight back?" Jennifer stood, her tone calm but firm. "We don't engage with her theatrics. That's exactly what she wants. The investigator already has proof of her infidelity. We'll file an injunction to have the post removed and use this as additional evidence of her malicious behavior." I nodded, but the anger bubbling inside me didn't subside. "She's dragging my name through the mud, Jennifer. How much longer do I have to put up with this?" "Not much longer," she assured me. "The courts will see through her act. But for now, stay quiet. Let me handle it." Later that evening, as I sat alone in the house, I scrolled through Emma's post again. Every comment, every like, felt like a slap in the face. But then something caught my eye. One comment, buried among the others, stood out. "Ben's name keeps coming up in your story, Emma. Didn't Michael catch you with him? What about the video evidence?" My heart raced. Someone out there knew the truth. Within minutes, Emma deleted the comment, but not before I took a screenshot. The next morning, I sent the image to Jennifer. "It's starting to unravel," I wrote. She replied almost immediately. "Good. Keep your focus. She's losing control." Emma thought she could rewrite the story, but cracks were already forming in her lies, and I was ready to watch her house of cards come crashing down. Emma's online smear campaign quickly gained traction, but as the days passed, so did the scrutiny. People started questioning the story she'd crafted, and the cracks in her narrative widened. I kept my distance, following Jennifer's advice to let the evidence speak for itself. It wasn't easy. Every lie she posted felt like a fresh wound, but I knew reacting impulsively would only play into her hands. Then the investigator came through with a game-changer. "Michael," he said over the phone, his voice charged with energy. "You're going to want to see this." He sent me a video file. My stomach nodded as I clicked play. It was footage from a park surveillance camera, recorded a week earlier. The quality wasn't great, but it was clear enough. Emma and Ben were in his car, parked in a dimly lit corner. They were kissing passionately, her hand trailing across his chest as they leaned closer together. But that wasn't all. The investigator had managed to sync the timestamp from the video with Emma's earlier social media posts, where she claimed to be homesick that day. It was the smoking gun we needed. I forwarded the video to Jennifer, and she called within minutes. "This is huge," she said, her tone triumphant. "This blows her victim narrative out of the water. I'll include it in our filing first thing tomorrow." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. But Emma, ever the wild card, wasn't going to back down without a fight. 2 days later, she showed up at the house unannounced. I just finished cleaning up after dinner when I heard the sound of her car screeching into the driveway. I opened the door to find her standing there, wild-eyed and unhinged. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she snarled, pushing past me into the house. "Emma, get out," I said, my voice steady. She ignored me, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "You've been spying on me, stalking me, trying to ruin my life." "I've been defending myself," I countered. "From you." Her laugh was cold and bitter. "You're pathetic, Michael. Running to your little lawyer, playing the victim. Do you think anyone's going to believe you?" "They already do," I said, holding my ground. "The truth has a way of coming out, Emma. And it's coming for you." Her face contorted with rage. "You think you can beat me? You're nothing without me. Nothing. Get out," I said again, pointing to the door. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You'll regret this, Michael. I'll make sure of it." Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a long time, the echo of her words hanging in the air. It was clear now, Emma wasn't just losing the battle. She was unraveling completely. As much as I wanted to feel triumphant, a part of me couldn't help but feel pity for the person she'd become. But pity wouldn't stop me from seeing this through. I grabbed my phone and texted Jennifer. "Emma came by the house tonight, threatened me again. Let's finish this." Her reply came quickly. "We will." I locked the door, turned off the lights, and went to bed. This wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about ending the chaos she'd brought into my life for good. The morning after Emma's unhinged visit, I met with Jennifer to finalize our next moves. The video evidence, combined with Emma's erratic behavior and blatant lies, had given us a solid case. "She's spiraling," Jennifer said, sliding a stack of papers across her desk. "Her attempts to discredit you are backfiring. We're filing for an emergency restraining order today." I nodded, still shaken from the previous night. "Good. I can't keep living like this. She's completely unhinged." Jennifer gave me a reassuring smile. "She's losing control, Michael. And when people like Emma lose control, they self-destruct." Later that day, I received an update from the private investigator. He'd uncovered even more dirt. Evidence that Emma had been spending money from our joint account to fund her escapades with Ben. Dinners, hotel rooms, even gifts. "She's been draining you financially," the investigator said grimly. "You need to freeze those accounts before she does more damage." Jennifer acted swiftly, filing the necessary paperwork to protect my finances. By the end of the day, Emma was cut off. When she found out, the fallout was immediate. My phone buzzed with a string of venomous texts. "How dare you freeze my money? You're a controlling piece of shit, Michael. You'll pay for this. Just watch." I forwarded everything to Jennifer, who responded with her usual calm efficiency. "This only strengthens our case. Stay focused." But Emma wasn't done yet. That evening, As I sat in my living room scrolling through emails, I heard the unmistakable sound of her car in the driveway. My heart sank. I peeked through the curtains to see her standing there, shouting at the house like a mad woman. "Michael, get out here. You can't hide from me forever." I grabbed my phone, recording everything as I opened the door. "What do you want, Emma?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She stormed up the steps, her face twisted with rage. "You think you can take everything from me? The house, the money, my reputation? You're delusional." "I'm not taking anything," I said. "You destroyed this marriage. You did this to yourself." "Bullshit," she spat. "You're trying to ruin me, Michael. But guess what? I won't let you." She shoved me hard, her nails digging into my arm. I stepped back, raising my phone to capture her outburst. "Get that thing out of my face," she screamed, swiping at the phone. "You're only making it worse, Emma," I said, backing away. "Go home before you embarrass yourself further." Her face contorted with rage. "You think this is over? It's not. I'll make sure everyone sees you for the pathetic loser you are." With that, she turned and stormed off, slamming her car door before peeling out of the driveway. I sent the video to Jennifer immediately. "This is gold," she replied. "We'll present it with the restraining order." She's digging her own grave. As I sat down, trying to calm the adrenaline coursing through my veins, I realized something. Emma's reign of chaos was nearing its end. She was fighting a losing battle, and no amount of theatrics could save her now. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of peace. I was winning. The day the restraining order was granted felt like a victory, though I knew the war wasn't over. Jennifer had presented the judge with all the evidence. Emma's unhinged behavior on my property, her threatening texts, and the surveillance footage of her and Ben. The judge didn't hesitate. Emma was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me and the house, effective immediately. "You've bought yourself some breathing room," Jennifer said as we left the courthouse. "But don't let your guard down. She's desperate, and desperate people are unpredictable." Her warning echoed in my mind later that night as I sat in the quiet house. For the first time in weeks, there was no shouting, no slamming doors, no unexpected appearances. Just silence. It was unsettling in its own way. I'd grown so used to the chaos that the stillness felt foreign. But the peace didn't last long. 2 days later, Emma found a way to escalate. I was at work when my phone started blowing up with messages from mutual friends. "Michael, what's going on? Emma's saying you've frozen all her accounts and left her with nothing." "Dude, Emma posted screenshots of your abusive texts. What's the deal?" My hands trembled as I scrolled through the notifications. Emma was doubling down on her lies, spinning an even more elaborate web of deceit. One friend sent me a screenshot of her latest post. "I've been abandoned, humiliated, and left with nothing. My husband has destroyed me financially and emotionally. Please, if you can, help me get back on my feet." Attached to the post was a link to a crowdfunding page. She was literally asking people for money to fight back against me. I couldn't believe the audacity. I called Jennifer immediately. "She's crowdfunding now?" Jennifer said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Unreal. But don't worry. This won't hold up in court. It's all noise." "I'm so sick of this," I said, pacing my office. "She's dragging my name through the mud. When does it end?" "When we finalize the divorce," Jennifer said firmly. "And we're getting close. Just stay the course, Michael. Every move she makes only strengthens our case." Her reassurance helped, but the damage Emma was doing couldn't be undone. Friends I'd known for years were questioning me, wondering if there was any truth to her claims. But then, a surprising ally emerged. That evening, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Michael?" a deep voice said when I answered. "Yes. Who's this?" "It's Ben." I froze. "Ben? As in?" "Yes," he interrupted. "Emma's driver. Or, as she likes to call me, her lover." My grip on the phone tightened. "What do you want?" "To talk," he said, his tone surprisingly subdued. "Look, I didn't sign up for this. Emma's dragged me into her mess, And now it's affecting my life. People are starting to ask questions. I've even lost a few clients because of the rumors. I let out a bitter laugh. Welcome to my world. I just want this to be over, Ben said. I'm willing to give you whatever you need. Texts, calls, anything that proves what she's been doing. Just get her off my back. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. The man she'd betrayed me with was now turning against her. Send me what you have, I said after a moment. I'll forward it to my lawyer. Done, Ben said. And for what it's worth.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I had no idea it would get this bad. I hung up, staring at the phone in disbelief. Emma's own lover had become a liability. The tide was turning faster than I'd expected, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like the finish line was in sight. Her lies, her schemes, her manipulations, they were all unraveling. And soon, there'd be nothing left for her to hide behind. Ben came through with everything he promised, and more. Within hours of our phone call, my inbox was flooded with screenshots of texts, call logs, and even photos Emma had sent him. The messages painted a damning picture of her deceit, manipulation, and outright cruelty. One text in particular stood out. Don't worry about Michael. He's too pathetic to fight back. Once I'm done with him, he'll have nothing left. I forwarded everything to Jennifer, who called me almost immediately. This is it, Michael, she said. This is the nail in the coffin. Emma's own words prove she's been orchestrating this entire circus. We'll add this to the restraining order violations and her financial misconduct. She's toast. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope, real, tangible hope that this nightmare might finally end. But Emma, as always, wasn't done. The next day, she showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant burst into the room, her face pale. Michael, she said nervously, your wife is here. She's causing a scene in the lobby. My heart sank. What kind of scene? She's shouting about how you've ruined her life, she whispered. Security is trying to calm her down, but she's refusing to leave. I excused myself from the meeting and rushed downstairs. Sure enough, Emma was standing in the middle of the lobby, her face flushed with anger. A small crowd had gathered, their murmurs filling the air as she screamed at the security guards. Michael, she shrieked when she saw me. You coward. Come here and face me. I took a deep breath and approached her, keeping my voice calm and steady. Emma, you need to leave. You're trespassing. Trespassing? She scoffed. This is your fault, Michael. You've destroyed my life, and you're hiding behind your lawyer like a spineless little boy. Emma, this isn't the place for this, I said firmly. Go home before you embarrass yourself any further. Embarrass myself? She spat, her voice rising. You're the one who should be embarrassed. Everyone here should know what kind of man you really are. A liar and a manipulator. I felt the stares of my coworkers and clients, their eyes burning into me. But instead of rising to her bait, I simply gestured to the security guards. Escort her out, I said. The guards stepped forward, but Emma wasn't finished. You'll regret this, Michael, she shouted as they led her toward the door. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you. The moment she was gone, I turned to the onlookers. Apologies for the disturbance, I said, keeping my tone professional. Let's get back to work. But inside I was seething. Later that night, Jennifer called with an update. We filed additional charges for harassment and defamation, she said. Her stunt at your workplace will only hurt her case further. She's digging herself into a deeper hole. Good, I said. The sooner this is over, the better. But the damage was already done. Word of Emma's outburst spread like wildfire, and by the next morning, my inbox was flooded with messages from concerned colleagues and clients. I spent the day doing damage control, but no amount of reassurance could erase the embarrassment I felt. Emma's collapse was accelerating, but it wasn't just taking her down, it was pulling me into the fallout. Still, I held on to one thought. The end was near. Her lies, her tantrums, her attempts to ruin me. None of it could stop the truth. And soon, the courts would make it official. The court date came faster than I expected, though it felt like I'd been trapped in Emma's chaos for an eternity. Jennifer had prepared me for what to expect, walking me through every detail of our case. The evidence was airtight. Emma's infidelity, her harassment, and her financial misconduct painted a clear picture. As I walked into the courtroom that morning, I felt a strange mix of nerves and resolve. Emma was already seated with her lawyer, her expression defiant, though there were shadows under her eyes. Her unraveling had taken a toll, but her arrogance was still intact. Jennifer gave me a reassuring nod as we took our seats. The proceedings began with Jennifer presenting our case. She laid everything bare. The videos, the text messages, the financial records, and Ben's damning testimony. The judge listened intently, his expression growing graver with each revelation. Emma's lawyer tried to counter, but their arguments were weak at best. They leaned heavily on her fabricated claims of emotional abuse, but Jennifer was ready. "Your Honor," Jennifer said, her voice calm but firm, "these allegations are not only baseless but are a transparent attempt to shift blame. The evidence speaks for itself." She handed the judge a folder containing Emma's texts to Ben, the ones where she mocked me, admitted to her affair, and even boasted about draining our finances. Emma squirmed in her seat as the judge read through the documents. "Mrs. Davis," the judge said, his tone stern, "do you have anything to say for yourself?" Emma hesitated, her confidence faltering for the first time. I was just trying to defend myself," she stammered. "Michael, he wasn't there for me. I made mistakes, but he—" "Mrs. Davis," the judge interrupted, holding up a hand, "this is not about your feelings or justifications. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of deceit and misconduct on your part. This court does not take kindly to such behavior." He turned to me, his gaze softening. "Mr. Davis, the court finds in your favor. The divorce is granted, with no spousal support awarded to Mrs. Davis. Additionally, the restraining order will remain in effect, and Mrs. Davis is ordered to vacate the marital home immediately." A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful it almost brought me to tears. This nightmare was finally over. Emma's face twisted in fury as the judge's words sank in. She turned to me, her voice a venomous whisper. "You think you've won, Michael? You'll regret this." I met her gaze, my expression calm.
No, Emma.
"The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner." As I walked out of the courtroom, Jennifer by my side, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle was over, and I'd won. Not just the divorce, but my freedom. The weeks that followed were a blur of rebuilding. I sold the house, packed up the memories I wanted to keep, and left the rest behind. Ben's testimony sealed Emma's fate, and the crowdfunding she'd started backfired spectacularly when people learned the truth. Her social circle shrank, and the sympathy she'd manipulated evaporated. I, on the other hand, found peace for the first time in months. It wasn't easy, but I was finally able to look ahead without the shadow of Emma looming over me. One evening, as I stood in my new apartment, looking out over the city, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Emma's lies had tried to destroy me, but in the end, they'd only freed me. And now, for the first time in a long time, my life was mine again.